Hey guys, this is Jeff, and I'm going to show you how to get your artwork ready for the 8-foot diameter by 32-inch tall circle trade show hanging sign. And to start off with, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the template and I'm just going to drag it into Photoshop. So this is actually going to open up the full-size template in Photoshop. And what you're going to want to do is actually design right on top of this. And so that way you know that the proportions are going to be correct and the size and everything else is going to be correct. So a couple things as we get started here. The first being you want to make sure that you keep the template as its own separate layer. So over here on the right. And that's because in the end, when you're all done with your layout, you're going to get rid of it, right? You don't want to print out the template. So you're either going to hide it or delete it. And the other thing is make sure that's in CMYK mode. And so up here at the top, I can see it's in CMYK. But for some reason, if this opens up and it's in RGB, go ahead and switch it over. And you can do that by going to Image, Mode, and make sure that CMYK color is selected. Okay, so now we're ready to go ahead and add in the logo to get started. So the way you do that is you go to File and Place. And here I have a vectored Adobe Illustrator file which has our logo in it. And it's important to point out you usually want to work with a vectored logo, one that's going to scale and not be pixelated. So if you do have a very small logo and it's not in vectored format, chances are when we go to scale this up and make it big, because it's being printed big, it's going to get pixelated, and we don't want that. So that's usually an Adobe Illustrator or a .eps file, and sometimes a PDF as well. But just make sure it's vectored and you'll be in good shape. So now we're going to go ahead and scale it. And usually what I do is I press Shift and I hold it down and I grab a corner and I can just then pull it, which will scale it. And it'll give us the size that we want as we do the layout here. And so I'm just going to scale a little bit more until right about there. And now I can just go ahead and drag it over to the left here. So this is going to be the position for the first one. And I can right click and just click place. And now what we can do, let's say I want to repeat the logo 3 times going all the way around, is I can go ahead and duplicate this layer. So instead of having to go back in, go to File and then Place and adding it again and having to scale it again, simply go over to your logo layer, right click and go to Duplicate Layer, click OK, and now you can see you just made a copy of it. So this will be our middle logo, and we're going to do it one more time, right click, duplicate, and we're going to move that over to the right here. So now I want to evenly space them, so I'm going to take the middle one and just kind of move it over a little bit to the left, and here we go. So this is just a general example of how you can do it. There's no set number of how many logos need to be all the way around the outside. It's just whatever looks right, whatever looks good. You can have it be repeated 3 times, 5 times, it really doesn't matter. So at this point, I want to inspect the elements, make sure that the resolution looks good, and I can do that by pressing Control and plus or Command and plus on a Mac. And you want to zoom all the way in until about 1 inch equals 1 inch in real life. So on the ruler bar here, here's 147 inches, here's 148. And that's about 1 inch in real life. So this will give me a really good idea if I have any pixelation at this point on the logo. But since this one is vectored, it looks good, so we don't have that. And I can use the navigator tool here to just kind of comb around and inspect everything to make sure it looks good. Also, remember that at the top here, you have the bleed, which is about 1 inch of space on the top and about 1 inch of space on the bottom here. So what does that mean? What do you do at the bleed? Well, if you have a background color, like let's say, for example, we're using a black background, go ahead and extend it all the way into the bleed space, but you don't want your logos anywhere near it. You want to keep at least a few inches away from the bleed line on the top and on the bottom so it doesn't get cut off or look funny because it's too close to the edge. So if you have a background, extend it all the way into the bleed, but for your logos, make sure that they're well away from that line. So you can press Control and minus or Command and minus to zoom all the way back out. And at this point, you want to go ahead and save a copy of your working layered file. So in case you need to make any edits, you have that to always revert back to. And now we're ready to go ahead and get started with the saving. And to do that, what you can do is, like we talked about before, is you can select the background template image, and I usually just drag it into the trash can, get rid of it altogether, and now we're just left with our artwork. And now one final step, you want to go ahead and flatten this, and so that it's just one compressed file, and you go to Layer and Flatten. So there you go. That's the full layout. This is actually going to print out as one file, one continuous piece, and then it'll be stitched and sewn and finished with the inside liner, and so that it fits the frame properly. And now we're ready to go ahead and save it. So now you can go to File and go to Save As. And usually what you want to do is you want to, if you can save it as a PDF file, but for these hanging sign documents, they're usually pretty big. And so if it doesn't allow you to save it as a PDF, which is fine, then you can go ahead and save it as usually a large Photoshop document, like a .psb. And that's going to be fine. That's going to be a file that can be used, no problem. Try not to save it as a JPEG. Those are compression files and don't always turn out as well as a PDF or a PSB file. So that's it. If you have any questions, obviously feel free to ask. Hit like below, and I'll talk to you soon.